We start with how you think that Insidious is, and I quote, the greatest horror film ever made. I'd like to hear your reasoning for why.
So one of my main things with horror movies has got to be sound effects. So everything in that movie, just the sounds, the instruments, how everything works, and shows that much fun. I'm not saying the villain, the red demon dude, is the scariest guy to ever look at before, but the sound effects were really, I think, make that movie one of the greatest.
So, when I hear greatest, I hear like everything needs to be perfect to make this movie. You can't make a scary movie with Darth Maul, basically, as your bad guy. And the third act of the movie where she goes into the whatever zone where she's like the astral plane, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Lin Shaye. Little known fact about Lin Shaye, her older brother is Robert Shaye, head of New Line Cinema. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Freddy Krueger. But James Wan's whole Insidious, Conjuring, they're all the same thing. And they all like start off pretty cool, pretty creepy, and then end in this ridiculousness that you don't need to see. So that's why I think it's a good movie, but greatest horror movie of all time, can't give it to it.
The reason I give it to it, though, is just because, like I've said before, it's one I've seen it at least 4 times. The first one, not... The last one's terrible, but the first one, that one, no matter how many times I watch it, it always manages to send chills down my spine.
So for me, like you said about sound, what I love in a horror movie is when sound's used in very subtle ways. So have you ever seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Mm-hmm. Very little score to it, almost no sound at all except for clucking chickens and little rocks and bells like hitting each other, and it's the weirdest, most bizarre thing ever. If you ever watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not the 2003 remake, but the 1974 version, it is absolutely unnerving because it's so real life and it feels so creepy and raw and dirty. Mm-hmm. And you watch it and then it has the whole, this is based on a true story, which it's not. But you watch it and it just is so unsettling. It makes you feel so uncomfortable and it sticks with you. Like I watch Insidious and okay, there's some jump scares and maybe a couple like little things I'll think about later. But you watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you need to like go take a shower because you just are like, I don't like anything about this. This just really got to my core. So I like a horror movie that really affects you.
One of that Sinister, which is my second favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
The sound effects for that one I really liked during the actual videos where you watch the families in the movie actually get murdered. And during the sound effects for those, actually, it was I forget what the video was called. It was the burning the car one. You've seen Sinister, right?
I've seen it once.
Saw it once, yeah. The sound effects for that one were, like you said, it wasn't like Texas Chainsaw where like the ambiance and everything makes you feel like you're there and it makes everything seem just so eerie. This one just made me feel kind of sick knowing that these people were inside the car being burned, and the sound effects that were going over it, the music was very, very, very chilling.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great movie, whether it's horror or not, is always going to take everything it can to mess with your senses. There's reports of the original Halloween movie. People in cinemas, when they were doing test screenings, they showed it without a completed soundtrack. And people were like, this movie sucks. It is awful. It is not good at all. And then they watched it with the soundtrack, and it became Michael Myers, the Halloween that we all know now. And it's solely because of the sound design. It's because they found a way to, those little John Carpenter scores that he put in just mess with you a little bit and make everything uneasy and make you feel on edge instead of just sitting back and feeling complacent.
Mm-hmm. The Thing, the original.
Well, technically it's actually a remake.
There's older than that?
Yeah, so there was the original Howard. So The Thing is actually John Carpenter's take on 1951, The Thing from Another World. If you actually watch the first Halloween, which is John Carpenter's first big movie, the kid, Tommy Doyle, is watching Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World on TV, and then 4 years later, John Carpenter would go to make The Thing. It's absolutely wonderful makeup effects made by Rob Bottin. He's the reason that I fell in love with horror and makeup effects. I think that movie's incredibly well done with scares you don't expect. And it stars Kurt Russell, who is an American treasure. And if it wasn't for my wife, I would have named my son Kurt Russell Dolph. But my wife would not let me name my son that. So, yeah.
One thing I think that movie does so well that if you compare it to the newer one, is that the sense of like isolation. Mm-hmm. Like the sense of like, even though everyone's there, you can't trust anybody, everything's incredibly tense, and just The CGI for the second one is terrible.
Yeah, and what's sad is actually the second one, the remake they did with what's her name, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think that's her name. That remake was supposed to be all done with practical effects, and they filmed it with practical effects. And the people at the studio didn't like it enough, so they just turned everything into CG, and it completely ruins the movie. I mean, the actual practical effects, when you can see something, if it looks real on screen, it grosses you out so much more. Those tentacles that are whipping around, you see it in CGI, you're like, cool, a computer program did it. But like you see it whipping around in real life, you're like, it's just unnerving. It makes you feel disgusting. But that isolation, and Kurt Russell's R.J. McReady, all the actors in the original one are just so good, and it's so perfect in its isolationist mood. And I love the ending of it. Is one of my favorite endings in movie history, and everybody has their own theory. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch The Thing. But spoiler alert, you've seen the ending. Do you think that The Thing is one of them, or do you think they're both not?
I think it'd be cooler if neither of them were the thing. They just both sit there, not knowing if they can trust each other.
Yeah. I have my theory. I don't want to say it, but if you ever watch The Thing and you want to discuss the ending of it with me, I have my theory, but I'm not going to say it on here because I don't want to ruin that movie because it's too perfect.